everyone. Welcome back to Salty Sunshine Podcast. We have a very, very special guest for the holidays, Hetal Vasavada.
Yes, nice to meet you.
So nice to have you on. I'm so excited. Baker extraordinaire. She has
It's
a
my
website.
season.
It's your
Oh,
season.
yeah.
And you have a website, Milk and Cardamom. Yes?
Yes,
I assume
milkandcardamom.com. hmm
milk and cardamom go together.
Very much so. It's a very cozy combination.
Sounds cozy, like a
hmm
tea.
Yep.
Wonderful. So Ethel's here to talk to us about a few things. You have a brand new book coming out. It's your second
Yeah.
book.
hmm
It's called Desi Bakes.
hmm
And also, you wanted to talk about Challenge Butter and how they're connected with a charity close to your heart. You want to go ahead and tell us about that?
Yeah. So Challenge Butter has partnered with Cookies for Kids Cancer with an initiative called A Challenge for a Cure. And the hope is that people will hold bake sales and make donations to Cookies for Kids Cancer to help raise funds for pediatric cancer research. And the way to do that is everyone's baking cookies this holiday season. An easy way to kind of give back is to post a picture on social media, tag Challenge Butter and tag Cookies for Kids Cancer, and use hashtag Challenge for a Cure. And for every post, Challenge Butter is donating a certain amount, up to a certain amount, I mean. So Challenge Butter is donating for every post that's posted up to a certain amount. And it's a really easy way to give back during the holiday season. I've had family that had pediatric cancer. I worked in um, cancer research in the past, and this, like you said, it's a very something that's very near and dear to my heart, and I feel like this is a great way to give back. And if you're unsure of what to bake, Challenge Butter has holiday packaging with a recipe for gorgeous stained glass snowflake cookies. I know they look
Lovely.
complicated, but they're
Yes.
not. They're very easy to make, I promise. But they have a really easy recipe inside the box of the wrapper.
So, what are the preferred sites? Is it all social media or is it certain?
Yeah. It's also, well, I think it's Instagram for the most part, but they're looking for a post with hashtag Challenge for a Cure and tagging
Okay.
Challenge Butter and Cookies for Kids.
And
And
then you
it's,
can also donate separately to
yes,
Cookies
you
for
can.
Kids?
Yes, you can. So you can go to cookiesforkidscancer.org, or you can go to challengebutter.org, and they'll have more information on how to do that. If you hold a bake sale and raise funds and you want to donate the funds, they'll have a way for you to do so.
Wonderful. And we'll put the
Yeah.
links attached to the videos that we had put here with the video with you.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, how you got into baking.
So I don't have a typical baking story, which is like most people, bake with their grannies or their moms growing up. Not the case for me. Um, Being Indian American, in baking is not a thing within Indian culture, to be honest.
It's not.
Um, no, most homes didn't even have ovens. Like my mom grew up with a neighborhood baker where you'd bring ingredients to him and then he would bake whatever you required. Um, but baking was just not a thing. If you're like, part of the Dutch or Parsi community, they do bake, but the community my family's from does not. So I got into baking because my organic chemistry professor told me that if I could bake, I would pass lab. Um, and I've really wanted to pass lab. And so I've actually started baking from box cake mix, like I think most people do.
Yes.
And then I fully hyperfixated and it became a deep obsession. And I ended up using any excuse to bake, procrastinate, rage bake, sad bake.
Did you bomb a lot, or what, did you get the
Oh,
hang
yeah.
of it pretty quickly?
Oh, no, I bombed a ton. I messed up so often, but because of my mess ups, now I know like where I went wrong. Like little simple things like using foil instead of parchment paper to line my baking trays. Um, Not freezing my cookie dough or chilling it long enough as the recipe required. Not mixing my butter and sugar together long enough as the recipe required. So like little mistakes led me to understand why you do certain things. Like I would get curious, like, okay, why did this fail? I need to know. And then it turns into this like full research for me.
Yeah.
And I was able to build my ability to do recipe development through all those fails.
So when did you start baking? At what age?
So this would be 18.
That's so
Yeah,
fascinating. Did you watch the movie Lessons in Chemistry? It's all about
I
cooking, and
did.
you're reminding me of that. Like I feel, and I may be wrong, but I
Mhm.
feel sometimes baking's harder than cooking.
It definitely is it's much more precise. And if you fail,
Yeah.
you have to wait until everything is done before you even realize you failed, right? Like when you're
Yes.
cooking, if something isn't salty enough or spicy, you can easily just adjust the seasoning,
I
right?
was gonna say,
Like,
whatever you're cooking, I feel like you throw in a bunch enough spices, and it's gonna
it's
be
fine.
edible. If you
Yeah.
if you mess up on baking, like you can't mess up the baking because then the
Yeah.
whole thing is bad.
Yeah. You can't undo it. There, that's
Yeah,
the
baking's
thing.
fascinating, and I'm no good at it. So,
I feel like it requires just a couple of things, like use a scale that'll fix like 90% of the problems people have, because using like cups for measurement can mess up the ratio of your flour to, butter and egg.
yes,
That's why, like, if you ever bake cookies and they turned out cakey or they didn't flatten out, there was too much flour. You packed your flour too tight. Or if the butter spread too, or the cookie spread too much, you didn't add enough flour. But if you use a scale, the ratio will always be appropriate. So the texture at least will be right.
I never thought of
And
that. What a great tip.
yeah.
Use a scale.
And you less dishes to do. You're not washing all those measuring cups. You're just dumping everything into a bowl.
Thank you,
Yeah.
because that's my cross to bear in life. Like I'm not a
Yeah.
fan of doing that, using a
Mhm.
bunch of little tools, and then you got to clean them. So,
Mhm.
so you have a husband and a daughter. Her name is
Yeah.
Alara.
Yeah.
How old is she?
She's 8 years old going on like 16.
Oh, so fun. So fun.
Yeah.
I went through that. My daughter's grown, but so
Mhm.
she's really loving baking and all the tips and helping in the kitchen.
Mhm. She very much likes it. She has ADHD, which I learned later on in life. I do too. So I really like skated by with undiagnosed ADHD for most of my life.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, and like she does not like getting her fingers dirty. So we do things differently. And I also don't like making a mess. Like I get stressed out if like you ever see the videos where the kids helping mom measure the flour and they like swipe the butter knife across and flour's everywhere, or they're like not, they're shoving their hands in the butter. What I do is I will measure everything out in like little containers before she joins me. And then her job is just to pick up the container and dump it in the bowl,
Smart.
and less
That's very
mess,
smart.
less
Yeah.
stress, like they're not going to add extra ingredients that they weren't supposed to. Like they're not going to get into the extra bits. So,
That sounds like a good tip for adults, even if you're not doing it with children, because like
yeah.
that's what they do on the cooking shows you watch on TV. They
Yeah.
have everything measured out because they don't have time to
Yeah.
do that on air. So that's a great
Yep.
tip. So have a scale and measure out your items pre
Mhm.
start baking.
Yeah.
Your first book, Milk and Cardamom, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
What would you say is the biggest? Because you have a new book,
Yeah.
Desi Bakes. What is the biggest
Yeah.
difference between the two books?
So the first book is an ode to Indian desserts, but it's a lot of fusion Indian and American/European desserts. But it leans closer to Indian because I use
Okay.
a lot of Indian pastry techniques. And I dive deeper into the various Indian desserts that exist out there, but make it more approachable to me, because American European baking is far more approachable than making Indian desserts.
Hmm.
So I, kind of combine them in a way, but it leans way more Indian. In Desi Bakes, it is, I would say, flavor wise and bake wise, it leans way more American, but looks wise, it leans full Indian. It's so all the bakes are decorated to look like various handicrafts and textiles and art, um, that I grew up with. My mom's side of the family was in textiles. My mom was a seamstress. Like her first job in America was sewing American flags.
Hmm.
Um, and my dad was in jewelry. So I grew up with a lot of like creative outlets, doing a lot
Right.
of like folk handicrafts and a lot of like crocheting and beading and embroidery and that kind of stuff. And I wanted to take the designs and sometimes even the techniques and bring it into my bakes to kind of see if I can take inspiration from that. And the other thing with Desi Bakes is, something I've realized as I've gotten older is I see a lot of adults and even kids nowadays be afraid to try new things. because they're
Mm-hmm.
scared to mess things up. Like they're scared that it's not going to look perfect. So they don't even try in the first place.
Yeah.
Um, and I want people to just have fun, like take inspiration from the world around you and just decorate. There's no right or wrong way. Like most of the designs in the of the desserts are all abstract, which means there's no right or wrong way to do it. Okay,
Right.
so what? Like your piping is a little off, or
Right.
you dropped a sprinkle where you didn't mean to. It's fine. It's totally
I
fine.
love
It'll be
that.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like going to art show. It's like if you're painting and then the splatter goes, it can
Mhm.
make it work and it looks
Mhm.
cool. I love that.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, I love that. So you can find your book on your website, milkandcardamom.com, right?
Yes.
So if anybody wants to check that out, it does look really cool. Your website, you don't only
Thanks.
have baking, you have some Indian dishes, you have drinks, you
Yeah.
have frozen desserts. You kind of venture out a little into a little bit of
Mhm.
everything. Looks
Yeah,
awesome.
I love cooking in general. I find baking to be more fun, but most people are cooking trying to get dinner on the table. I am too. So I try to, share those recipes as well. Um, but yeah, you can find a bunch of recipes on my blog. You can also find my book on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Target, or I highly recommend checking out a local bookstore to see if they have it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love a local bookstore. Are you doing signings?
Yeah, I just did 2 months of on my tour, and then I'm going back on tour in January. So I'll be in
Oh,
Chicago, Austin, Dallas, Atlanta, and then I'll be
wow.
back in New York. Yeah, it was a whirlwind tour. I think I was home for all of like 6 days in October and November. It's a lot of
Oh,
traveling.
geez, Louise. That sounds amazing. So, what would you say is your favorite dessert? Like, what is one of
Ooh.
your favorite things to bake?
Okay. So in my newest cookbook, I have a tender coconut cream pie.
That sounds
And
amazing.
oh, I love it. I'm obsessed with it. So it is, I will go buy like a drinking coconut, like the coconuts you see at the store that are white and they have like a straw that you can put in it. The
Hmm.
reason why is because the meat is soft, right? In a tender coconut. Um, versus like, if you were to get the brown hairy coconuts, the meat is hardened at that point. So what I do is I will take the coconut water out, crack the coconut open, scoop the meat, blend that with some cornstarch, sugar, a little bit of cardamom, and some coconut milk. And then I make a custard out of that. Um, and then I fold whipped cream into that custard and I decorate the top with shredded coconut. And it has such a more refreshing tropical flavor. Like mature coconut and young coconut have very different flavors, in my opinion.
Okay.
Um, and I feel like if you're not a mature coconut fan, you'll love this. It's just
Mm.
really, really light, fluffy, melts in your mouth. It's eggless. Fun fact: a lot of Hindus do not eat eggs on high holidays. Um, so
Okay.
like Diwali and Holi, a lot of people don't eat eggs. I grew up, and there's different sects of Hinduism that also don't eat eggs. So like my
Hmm.
mom's side of the family didn't eat eggs, so I'd have to always make eggless desserts. So in my second book, I have an egg substitute for every recipe where the egg can be substituted. There are some where
Amazing.
obviously like the recipe needs an egg, but for the ones that it's okay to do it without, I have a sub.
Well, that's great for
Yeah.
vegans, right?
Yeah. Vegans and people who have egg allergies, which,
Amazing. I love
yeah.
that. That sounds really good. I love a coconut cake.
Hmm.
Um, when you go to somebody's house
Hmm.
and you're going to bring cookies, what cookie would you recommend and how many cookies? Is it six? Is it a dozen? How much is too
Okay.
much?
So shortbreads are my go to just because I'll always
Okay.
have all the ingredients for shortbread. It's just butter, sugar, vanilla, flour.
Oh,
That's it.
okay.
Very simple. So I'll make that. And the other thing is you don't have to scoop out or like individually cut out anything. You just press the whole dough into like a cake pan or in a singular pan and then bake it and then cut it up into, individual sized pieces after that. So it makes baking much faster and they transport well. So shortbreads are my favorite to bring. The other thing is I like to make 2 cookies per person. That's usually how I'll
Okay.
do it. So if like 12 people are gonna be, I'll make 24. Um, Because, there's always going to be like those few people that are like, oh, I can't have the whole cookie. I'll break it in half and then like take
Yes.
half a cookie. And then there's people like me that are like, I would like one of every cookie. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Um,
of course. I
so
love
it's like
that.
the right amount is like 2 cookies per person.
Yeah, shortbread and sugar cookies are kind of like shortbread, but not really. Those are good
So,
choices.
yes, very good choices.
What do you think is the new what's like hot in the baking world today? Is
Ooh,
it like the regular chocolate chip cookies? Is it something specific?
I think having fun with flavors. I've seen people adding corn to a lot of like sweet desserts. The other thing I see as really popular is adding like doing like the Neapolitan drop cookies. So I've seen like strawberry chocolate vanilla where they'll make like a drop cookie, like a sugar cookie that, you roll into a ball and bake. Um, but they'll like mash together 3 flavors of cookie dough, roll it together and bake it. Um, the other thing I'm seeing that's super popular is people bringing in their cultural flavors into them.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of like Asian, like this year, there are books like Breaking Bao by Clarice Lamb, where she does a lot of like pandan and like Asian inspired flavors in traditional European bakes. Um, there's Bodega Bakes, where she does Puerto Rican inspired bakes, where she's taking flavors from her background and adding them to like beautiful desserts. Like, this is, I think, the year of people not just doing the typical,
Yeah,
chocolate chip cookie and sugar cookie. Like, they're
right.
bringing in fun flavors and making it more exciting and
Yeah.
opening up the doors as into the different flavor ways. Because let's be real, desserts are like my favorite way of learning about a culture and trying new cuisines. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's less intimidating.
Right.
It's as a vegetarian, it's easier for me to go try
Okay.
like, a dessert than to try something savory, which might have meat in it.
Or an eyeball or
So
something.
exactly. So it's like it's easier. It's less scary, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you're right.
so
Because food is
yeah.
intimidating because there could be anything in there.
Yeah, like you don't, especially if you're unsure, like not unsure, but like you're just not used to the ingredients. It's
Mm-hmm.
a less scary way to introduce yourself to new flavors and new
Totally.
cuisines. Hmm.
Agreed. What is a big baking myth? Is there a baking myth?
Uh, that let's see. Like for me, I think. Oh, I don't know if it's a myth or not, but that you have to freeze like when you're making cookie dough. If you freeze cookie dough, you just wrap it in a dense square and call it a day. You can roll it out, like I roll it out between parchment paper in thin sheets, and then freeze it in sheets. And then you just take it out and it takes 10 minutes to thaw versus like half a day.
Interesting. Well, that's a
Yeah.
tip.
Yeah. It's more of a tip. I don't know if there's any baking myths, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you see baking evolving into? Do you see anything cool for like the future for the next 5, 10 years? What do you think we're
Yeah.
going to see more of other than
I
the
think,
background?
yeah, I think people are going to um, bring in obviously their cultural backgrounds, but I think also you're going to see more micro bakeries coming out. I think micro bakeries, people are realizing it's such a big investment to have like a bakery or like an actual brick and mortar location
Mm-hmm.
that having a home micro bakery is a really easy way to one,
Mm-hmm.
you're not overwhelming yourself by mass manufacturing food consistently. You get to be in your own home. You are feeding your community. Um, and I think like that's going to be a big thing that's going to roll out, I think, across the nation. I see it a lot here in the Bay. You see lots of micro bakeries popping up. And I think
Yeah,
there's
I
going to
agree
be
with
more.
you. I feel like the micro in general
Yeah.
section, I see it with coffee. I see carts. I
Hmm.
see
Yeah.
drinks, like mobile drinks and carts and
Hmm.
coffee. So that makes total sense that they'll do that with
Oh,
baking as well.
yeah.
Yeah, I like that. You were a Master Chef season 6, right?
Yeah, I was. I was.
How was
It,
that? Do you miss it?
oh, oh no. Um, yeah. So MasterChef was a trip. So the way it works is it films for 3 months. You're sequestered in hotel rooms with no outside contact to the world,
Oh,
no TV.
wow.
Um, n- you get one 10-minute phone call a week to call your family. Um,
Whoa.
you are basically under watch. Like you have a babysitter that takes you to your hotel room and locks you in and picks you up the next morning and takes you to the bathroom, brings you back to the bathroom. Like you're never alone, other than
Wow.
the moment they shut the door in the hotel room for you
What an
to go
investment, huh?
in. Yeah, it's a lot. Um, I've also like learned to watch reality TV with a grain of salt, and I love reality TV. I'm watching everything. I'm watching the Love Is Blinds, the Love Islands, and Top
Me
Chef,
too.
everything. I
The,
love it.
the ultimatum that just
Yeah.
came out.
Oh
It's
my
so good.
God. I watched the reunion
Jesus.
yesterday. What a wreck. The QR, what is it? The chip
The
nail?
QR code on the
I loved it.
nail.
I was like,
What
you are
was
so
that? I'm
smart.
like, who does that? That's so weird. That was a
No,
genius, though.
well, she was smart because she knew she couldn't have her phone on set, right? So,
Hmm.
like, way to think ahead to be like, I'm not going on down under the bus without these receipts being shown.
I
I
know,
get
but
it.
you
I'm with
you
you.
hear all about all these scams with QR codes. So if somebody
Hmm.
showed me their nail and like do the photo, I'd be like, no,
Yeah,
thank you, no, because people are
it's
scamming people.
yeah, yeah, they are. But hers was a chip. It wasn't a QR code. It was a chip. So it's a
Yeah.
chip that once it comes close, your phone gets close to it, kind of like when you do an airdrop. You can airdrop a site. So basically, airdrop the site to, yeah.
How
But
much do you think she paid for that?
oh, I'm sure like
A lot.
a
Yeah.
lot. But
So
yeah,
funny.
I watch it all now with like a grain of salt. And like I, the other thing is 90% of the folks that go on MasterChef typically go back to their old job. So to come out of it, you really have to know what your goal is and how you're going to take that 15 seconds of fame and flip it into a potential career.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
like for me, I came off like I knew exactly what was going to happen. I kind of was like very aware because the contract they make you sign is I don't know, like some of the contracts have gotten better, some of the terms, but they know that like you are so excited to be on TV that you're probably not going to talk to a lawyer to look over it, right?
Right.
So the
Mm-hmm.
contracts will say things like, we want 15% of your income for the next 3 years with the option for it to go in perpetuity. We own your image in perpetuity. The other is you have to ask them permission to do anything. I wasn't allowed to do YouTube videos at the time because they considered it a conflict of business. I
Yeah.
wasn't allowed to do pop-ups. I wasn't allowed to um, do a lot of things because they saw it as a business conflict. So they really kind of like
Right.
don't really,
Well,
it
they
doesn't
figure you're
really
gonna
help.
blow up and become a star, right? But did you learn anything worth taking away with you? A lot, yeah, anything
Um,
positive?
for me, I took away confidence that like I didn't have at the beginning of the show that my food is actually good and that there's value there in my skill.
Great.
I definitely took that away. The other is the hustle. Like I've always
Mm-hmm.
hustled throughout most of my life, especially being, the daughter of an immigrant and like there's a hustle that's already innate in you.
Yeah.
Um the hustle like definitely, ignited a little bit of a fire under my butt to like work.
And you get to see
Um
like a different side of everything.
mhm.
It feels more real. My daughter was a dancer when she was in school throughout her whole like grade school career, and I would always say
Mhm.
like when we would go to competition in other cities, you think you're the best of the best of the best in your little zip code, but you go over there and you're like, whoa, there's a lot of
Mhm.
talented people. It's not just you guys.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good that's a good thing to
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. To know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. For me, like I knew I never wanted a brick and mortar restaurant. Like it's not conducive to a family life. I worked in
Right.
restaurants, to pay for school. So like I knew that was not a goal for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew what I wanted, like what I enjoyed, which is the recipe development, the food photography, the social media. Like there are parts of it that I really did like doing, like the plating aspect. I loved plating. I also learned that I'm not the best plater. So that was a skill that I actively worked towards making better. I knew that I was really good at balancing my flavors, and that
Hmm.
was a skill that I like have now very much like deep confidence in, that I know my flavor combinations are good.
Love that.
Um so like because like you have to have a certain level of confidence, right, to be selling food
Yeah.
and telling people to pay you for it.
And it's easy to second guess yourself, especially once you get on social media, because there's so many, people out there that say
Yeah.
nonsense, and you don't know, are they ridiculous, or is it true, or
Yeah, exactly.
it's so. Did you
Uh
watch Martha Stewart documentary?
I know. She is a G. Jesus.
Oh my God, she makes you want to go like sew something and bake something.
I'm like,
She's so
my God.
fabulous.
She's so
Yeah, I loved it.
fabulous and she's so unapologetic about like everything.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, I did what I did and
Yeah. 'Cause, content creation, it's a lot of work,
yeah.
especially like with a beautiful website like yours, and the angles, and doing videos. It's a lot of work
You're
to
a
get
prop
it.
stylist, food photographer, your own agent for a lot of the times. You are a copywriter, you are a food writer, a recipe developer, recipe tester. Like there's so many jobs that it encompasses. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about, I don't know if you've ever dipped into this or thought about it, but the baking side for like weight conscious, or like body, not bodybuilding, but people that
Hmm.
go to the gym, like
Yeah.
do you ever try to mess with like protein bakery? No.
What I've learned is I can't be everything for everyone.
Hmm.
And like my strengths are like I'm not a gluten-free baker, I'm not a health food baker. I
Hmm.
am like I do regular baking with Indian inspired flavors. That is my
Yeah.
niche. Um so I don't usually add proteins and stuff just because it is a skill to be able
Hmm.
to replace, ingredients and substitute them and know how they work and how they're going to interact with the other ingredients. And it's a skill that I don't have. And I think there's other people out there that are like far better than me at it. And
Yeah.
I'd rather people go to them. So if people ask me for like, hey, can you send me like a high protein muffin recipe or what's a good gluten free cookie recipe? I'm happy to send them other food bloggers that specifically create recipes for them.
Right.
Um,
And you'll probably
yeah.
sacrifice texture and taste along the line. Some you have to,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
ingredients. Okay.
100%. And it's a concession you have to be willing to make. Um, which is why, like, when, I remember when all these like protein cereals started coming out and people were complaining about the flavor. I'm like, yeah, but this is a concession you're having to make is the texture and the flavor to get the protein in. And some people are okay with that and some
Yeah.
people aren't. It just
Yeah.
depends on like you and what you're okay with.
You
But
can't have it all.
yeah. Like you can say it's nasty. That's why you'd see like people saying, "Oh, it's gross," and then some people saying this is great because they understand the concession that they have to make to get the, whatever nutritional value they're looking for.
The butter you use when you bake, is it
Hmm.
like, because I know there's like olive oil, sea salt, or regular butter. What is your preference?
Yeah, I always use unsalted sweet cream butter.
Okay.
Every butter brand adds a different amount of salt to their salted butter. So like some
Mhm.
brands might be saltier than others. And when you're baking, you want to control the amount of every ingredient. So I always do unsalted unless the recipe requires salted butter. It's always
Right.
unsalted sweet cream butter.
Okay.
Hmm.
And if you're a beginner and you're like, oh, I want to try baking, but I've never done it, you do you suggest the shortbread cookie,
The
or
Yeah,
what do you suggest?
shortbread cookies are a great intro. Snickerdoodles are a great way. One, you can they're flexible recipes, but two, you can really mess with the flavors. You can swap out spices, you can swap out sugars. I wouldn't swap out like the flour or anything, but it's a really easy way to just kind of like personalize a bake. Um, the other is start from box cake mix.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sometimes that's all it takes is, like, start with box cake mix, then maybe you get a little, you know, try to make a three-tiered cake with the box cake mix. Oh, the cake mix like, the cake is falling apart. Okay, well, I need to provide more structure. Do I add another egg white to the box cake mix? Like, you can you slowly will start, as you're Googling and researching, and playing with the box cake mix, there's many things you can learn.
What's your favorite recipe right now you have on your
Ooh. On my
website or
blog.
your book?
Yeah. Um, outside of the tender coconut cream pie,
Oh,
I
that's right.
have that is like my favorite. Um, I love it so much. I've made them like at least one a month because my husband loves it.
Is it like a
Um,
cheesecake texture? Is
no, it's like
no.
a really fluffy cream, like a custard pie, but just like much lighter, like airier. Um, it still slices really neatly, but it's just much airier. I really like
Is
I
that
have a
on your
masala.
website?
That's on my book in my book.
In your book? Okay, because I kind of want
Yeah,
to try that one.
it's so good. On my blog, I recently put some cookie recipes up. I just did a chewy peanut butter chocolate swirl cookie that is so insanely delicious that it's like salty and peanut buttery, and like if you like a Reese's, this is like ideal.
Yum. I do like a Reese's.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a
So
huge
good.
sweet tooth, but I do like a few bites of something really good. I don't like to
Yeah,
waste
yeah.
my sweet tooth, if that makes sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
if
I
I
get
know I
it.
don't like it, I'm not gonna,
I'm the same.
I don't love a tres leches,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not gonna bite it because it's not my favorite. Although I think it tastes great, it's not my favorite, so I rather pass.
Yeah,
But the
I'm the
coconut
same.
sounds great.
Yeah, I'm exactly like you. Like, I'm not gonna eat something just to eat it. I'm like, if it, I'll have it because it's really good. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's your daughter's favorite?
Mm, she really likes sugar cookies. I have a sugar cookie recipe on my blog that's fairly simple and easy. Mostly because what I do is I'll add food coloring to the sugar cookie dough. And then I let her mash it up and make designs. And then we roll it out. And she has this like psychedelic tie dye looking sugar cookie that she can enjoy.
Oh, that's so fun. I
Yeah.
love that. Are you a fan of baking a large batch of cookies and freezing them and eating later? Is that work?
Yeah. Shortbreads, people do freeze shortbreads. I usually will freeze the dough and then bake it as needed just because I like having a warm cookie straight from the oven. Um, But I'm a small batch baker. I got a small family of three. Really, if you think about it, two and a half. So I do like most of my recipes make just a dozen cookies,
Yeah,
which is more than enough in my household.
of course. Because do you have family in the U.S.?
I do. All my family lives in Jersey though. So like I have a big family. My dad's got six brothers and two sisters, and my mom's got six sisters and a brother. And then at any given point, they all lived in my house with me. So like we're all very close. Because my dad and my family sponsored a lot of them when they came to the US. And then they lived with us until they had enough money to settle on their own. Um, but they all live in New Jersey and like now Florida. Um, and Texas, and we're the only ones in California.
Nice.
So, like, I used to do big batch baking and make like, 5 dozen cookies, and now I've switched to small batch.
Well, now you have to ship your cookies over to your
Yeah.
family.
Yeah. I just recently put out a couple boxes.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, it's been wonderful getting to know you. Tell everybody where they can find you other than milkandcardamom.com, and also
Yeah.
what's your Instagram.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Milk and Cardamom as well. And same on TikTok.
Great. I can't
Yeah.
wait to try one of your recipes, especially the
Thank
coconut.
you.
What's it called again?
It's a tender coconut cream pie.
Tender coconut cream pie. I am definitely
Yeah.
going to try that. And it was so great to meet you. And I hope to talk to you soon again. Happy
Thanks.
holidays.
Nice. Happy holidays.